Here with Florida Panthers Assistant General Manager Mike Santos. Mike, just a little bit, you just finished exit meetings, and how did that go, and what was the general message to the players here today?
Well, how did it go? I think it went as well as it could have, meaning we didn't make the playoffs. We're not going to win the Stanley Cup this year. And so when you don't achieve those things, the exit meetings are never good. I wouldn't expect them to be good. I wouldn't expect players to be satisfied. However, I think this was a learning process this year for Dale Talon and myself. It was also a learning process for the players. We knew that we lacked a little bit of depth. We've been forced to put younger players into situations that they weren't ready for. And so I think the learning experience for Dale, myself, and the players was a good one. And the players now leave here knowing clearly what our plan is for the future, both to develop our young prospects and also to go forward this summer and bring in some quality NHL players who are NHL ready.
It's going to be a much different looking deal next year, right? You're going to have a new coach, quite a few new players everyone can expect, right?
I would expect so. That doesn't mean that anybody who's here now doesn't have the chance to earn a spot on the team next year. But we'll be another year closer to our plan, our fruition with our plan. So we came in here knowing it was going to take a minimum of 3, probably 4 years to do that. 2 years to set up our organization through the draft and fill our farm system with prospects. We've had some prospects. Unfortunately, they've been forced into play in the NHL and have not been developed properly. And now we had a draft of 13 players last year, which is really 2 drafts in one, considering your draft is 7 rounds. We have 10 draft choices this year. We hope to acquire a few more. So after this year's draft, our hope is to have basically 4 drafts done in 2 years, yeah. or a little over a year. So that accelerates our plan a little bit. However, when you draft these players, it still takes 2 more years of development in junior or college hockey or wherever they're from before they really should even become pro players. So we're a year closer to turning last year's draft picks into pro players. A year from now that should happen, and 2 years from having a full farm system. So that's step 1. Then step 2 for this summer is to make our team here in Florida competitive while we wait for those draft picks to develop. And we did some things at the trade deadline this year that is going to give us the ability to go out and be aggressive in the free agent market and see what we can bring in here to make the Florida Panthers a quality team on the ice next year while we wait for the young guys to develop.
Dale Talon said today that in the new coach search, you're looking for a coach more suited towards you guys' style. Maybe, does that mean not as plodding offensively? I mean, what does that mean as far as the change in direction, coaching-wise?
I don't know if it's necessarily a style on the ice, a style of play. Although we certainly know that we need to be a more offensive team. And in fairness to the coaching staff that was here, we didn't have a lot of talent up front at the forward position, but we need to have a style on the ice that's a little bit more wide open, a little bit more play to win instead of playing not to lose. It was great this year that we had almost 51 goal games, but I want to start winning those games. And there's nothing wrong with winning by 2 or 3 goals. Yeah. So I think more than anything on the ice, that means becoming a little bit more offense oriented, and having a team that goes out there night after night, trying to win instead of not trying to lose.
You look at again, the 1-goal games. You go, I think you went 19-18 and whatever the math is there. Not a lot in 50 games or so with 2 goals or less. I mean, just how do you improve the scoring with this team?
Well, like in any sport, you can take any sport these days, baseball or football, basketball. I mean, everybody concentrates on defense. So the only way you're going to create more offense is by taking some chances and taking some risks. If you play a system or a style that relates to 1-goal games, 2-1 games, 3-2 games, that's what you're going to get. and you take your chances that you're gonna win half of them and lose half of them, and that's pretty much what we did. Unfortunately, in the NHL, that doesn't come out to be 50% because then they make you play an extra 5 minutes in a shootout, and many times, an extra point gets decided in that shootout. So, I think more than anything, we're going to have to take a little bit, a few more risks and play a little more exciting hockey offensively to try to score more goals.
You're going to Rochester on Tuesday to do exit interviews with the Americans. Last year, the agreement with them, obviously a disappointing year on and off the ice with that. A little bit about the fresh start moving forward as far as your farm system goes.
Well, as I explained a few minutes earlier, it takes time to build up a farm system. We really had very little. Not that we didn't have some talented young players, but most of them were already forced into action here in Florida. It takes a couple of years to build up the farm system. Last year we had 13 picks. They're now 1 year closer to becoming pro players. This year we have 10 and hopefully more picks in the draft, and they'll be from draft day. They'll be 2 years away from being pro players. So I would say a year from now we'll be halfway there, and 2 years from now we'll be all the way there as far as having a fully stocked farm system with good young prospects who we can develop properly. As far as the season on the ice there, I'm not really disappointed with the season on the ice in Rochester. I believe everybody who knows the American Hockey League understands that unfortunately they don't get to pick their players and keep their players. When you have a lot of injuries like we did here in Florida this season, I think we had well over 200 man games.
Yeah.
That's where you go for your players. And when you take players from Rochester, you're not taking their middle-of-the-road players or their young players. You're taking their best players. I mean, for most of the season, we had 6 or more players injured. So for most of the season, we had 6 players from Rochester. They're top players here in Florida. In addition to that, they have their own injuries, and they've had a tough year injury-wise there. They lost Michael Nylander, 5 games into the season for the whole season. They lost Mark Cullen for 50 games this season. I mean, there's 130 man games of injury right there for 2 top-notch American Hockey League centers. And it's just hard for any organization, especially the American Hockey League team, to recover from that, both when the NHL team and its own team are decimated by injuries.
And Michael Grabner was on his way up to Rochester, and I think made it to Rochester physically before he was picked up by the Islanders, correct?
Right. I mean, those are things that happen. That's why there's a labor system. Michael Grabner, I believe a lot of people would have said Mike Santos would have ended up in Rochester when we signed him last summer. Maybe other than myself, who knew him real well, a lot of people saw that signing or that trade and the signing and said, oh, he's really going to make Rochester a top team. It's just the way it happens, and that's the way it should happen. Guys should have a chance to come in and earn a spot or not earn a spot on training camp. And if they've been in the league for a few years and they've earned the right to have waivers, then other teams can select them before they go to the American Hockey League.
Any regrets on Grabner? I know hindsight's 20/20, and I know nobody would have guessed he'd score that many goals.
No, I mean, sure, I wish he would score them for us, but maybe he would not have scored them for us. I don't know. I mean, the system that we played this year probably wasn't conducive to him, especially being a smaller guy. He also went to an organization where, they got off to a pretty rough start and, really played wide open, carefree hockey for probably 3/4 of the season because they really weren't in the playoff race. So when you take the reins off of a player like that who's talented and just let him have a little bit of free rein on the ice, he's going to get more offensive opportunities, and he is talented.
All right. Thank you, Mike.